The Market Bubble 2021.
Do it. Do it. Pop it. Pop it.
You know, it's a balloon. It's not a bubble. I feel like a bubble would just go, but this balloon is going to go bang. That's not even a good analogy for what we're trying to do.
Do it.
All right, stick around to see if I pop the thing. There's a teaser for you. But first, I got some things in this video to consider if you're worried about the direction of the U.S. housing market. Welcome to my channel, everyone. I'm Tony Freese, and I usually focus on living in New Braunfels, Texas, and other towns in between Austin and San Antonio. But today, I'm looking at some national trends and some state of Texas data that will support my belief that we are turning a corner. And while we're not necessarily going to crash, we're headed for some softening after a super crazy, once-in-a-lifetime, perfect storm, asterisk needed real estate market. Are we in a bubble? What is a housing bubble? An increase in prices fueled by demand and other factors to the point of collapse. The increase in demand, limited supply, which takes a while to replenish either with new listings or new construction, continues until at some point demand decreases at the same time supply increases. Prices drop, bubbles burst, or at least. So yes, we've got a bubble. Still, are we starting to see demand decrease or supply increase? There's a couple of things to check out if you haven't read about them yet that might help you believe we're headed in that direction. If you're an investor or a home buyer, maybe somebody who's thinking about whether to sell their home right now, or maybe someone looking at renting versus buying, you're probably looking for indications that the market is cooling off. Let me mention a couple of them, and then I want to show you some graphs of some trends here in Texas that are just as important. But before we get to that, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my channel, especially if you're interested in this kind of stuff, or if you're thinking about buying or selling anywhere in between Austin and San Antonio. Subscribing and liking definitely helps. It tells the YouTube computers to send people my way, and if you comment, it helps educate me and other commenters on stuff I may have gotten wrong, or maybe gives me ideas for new content, so thank you for that. Now, mortgage purchase applications are down. Simply the number of people submitting applications in order to purchase a home. That figure, after climbing exponentially in 2020 and 2021, has fallen down to mid-2019 levels. So obviously the demand for homes, at least by folks needing a mortgage and not paying cash, is declining. Check out this graph from the Mortgage Bankers Association. It illustrates demand for new homes over the last couple of years. There's movement over and under their purchase index on the left here with an average of about 260. That's a long-term average. You can see that there was below average demand from 2016 to 2018, and then things normalized in 2019. Here's the huge dip in April as everyone freaked out over the corona. And then, of course, things exploded as everyone thought it was just a great idea to move, and thus something of a bubble was created, shown here with a giant increase in home mortgage applications. And here we are in June, falling to the 2019 levels. I know many people and companies are just paying cash for homes, so this obviously isn't a total reflection of actual circumstances, but that's only about 20%. It's allowed 20%, but the vast majority of folks still need a mortgage, so this is a really important indicator. As that demand is declining, the construction of new homes is surging. Construction of new homes is at a 15-year high. I've talked about new home construction in several videos now, and with each episode I had to keep pulling back my enthusiasm because builders started governing or metering the opening of their new phases. Because their costs got out of control, and some of them even canceled contracts and started changing the rules and employing gimmicks and bid systems and whatnot, to a point where a lot of people thought, well, they're probably not really even building that much at all, are they? Well, in fact they are. New construction projects are everywhere, not just here in Central Texas, but everywhere in the country. The most housing starts in over 15 years in just the last year, and that's still going on. We're talking about starting homes that take several months to complete, so we won't see the full effect of this until probably the end of this year, 2021, as these housing starts become completed homes. Again, this is happening at the same time demand is falling. So I just mentioned the rising cost of materials for new construction projects. Lumber, 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 right? Everybody's talking about that. Well, you know what? The price of lumber is falling now. That's right, just like the number of mortgage apps rose during the pandemic, lumber prices went through the roof. Literally. Not just because of new construction, but you had half of America staying home and building raised gardens and whatever. Well, that's over. The prices are coming down. If you're not seeing it at Lowe's yet, you will. There's probably an inventory lag. Prices are still up 175% over the past year, so they may never get to where they were, but they are coming down. Here in June, they're down 30% from the high in just early May. I'm not saying everything's going to happen tomorrow. Pop, boom, bang. Multiple offer situations, bundles of cash over list price, super tight inventory levels. You know, that stuff's going to continue. It's just the rate is slowing. Here's a graph showing months of inventory in Texas since May of last year. Remember, I've discussed inventory in previous episodes. If you stopped listing homes for sale, how many months does it take to run out? That's your inventory. A balanced market in between a buyer's market and a seller's market is 6 months. That's how long it should take you to run out if everything was peachy. You can see that Texas had 3.3 months of inventory in May of 2020, and that has steadily reduced to 1.3 in March of this year and hasn't gone down since then. We're holding at 1.3, and I expect that to begin to climb. Of course, some markets within Texas have seen just a few weeks of inventory, and that's been a huge problem, but this is for the whole state. The days on market is another interesting graph I was looking at. Since August, homes were selling faster and faster and appears to have bottomed out at just 37 days in April and bouncing back up in May to 41 days. Again, this is for all the listings in Texas, even the most expensive ones that typically take much longer than your average $300,000 properties that have been disappearing after only like a weekend on the market. This shows that that market is softening. I know all real estate is local and broad generalizations about real estate should be taken as such, but these are trends that are important to consider. Another one to look at is the new listing count. This chart illustrates the count of new listings added to the Texas market month over month. So here's the zero line, which is like another long-range average. And as we progress through time, we see the total number of new listings increase over or decrease under the average. Once again, in April of 2020, everything froze, and then the very next month we see the boom of activity, and then once those are sold, hardly any new ones come along until January of this year. And now we're in this positive territory. As this continues and houses come back on the market, prices will stabilize. So a lot of reasons for this huge surge of demand has been kind of temporary. Starting with low interest rates. Now, they've been low for a very long time, since like the early 80s, so I don't know how temporary I should call it, but I do think we're at the end of a very long, unusually long cycle. No one's talking about raising them significantly. That probably would be disastrous. But I think if we're going to see inflation, there's going to need to be slow increments. Maybe like a half point by the end of the year. Next, you had some people getting the idea during the pandemic, while everything was closed, that they could just live anywhere and work virtually from wherever they wanted in the country. Well, many of the companies are announcing they actually want their employees back in-house. New York companies telling people they're not going to pay New York prices to Zoom workers in Florida. Did you see that news story? It's temporary. As the pandemic fever comes down, people are going back to work, so no more DIY projects requiring trips to Home Depot for 2x4s and plywood. Supply chains for concrete, appliances, and other essential materials for new builds are coming back online. Temporary. I think the elephant in the room is the number of people wanting to escape to a different environment for political and safety reasons. That may not be so temporary, but you do finally have a lot of restrictions being lifted, pushback on some of these police reform measures, and generally a lot of hysteria has or is thankfully dissipating. COVID greatly accelerated a behavioral shift that had many people looking to move or buy, some for the first time. However, average Americans can only afford so much, and it appears that housing on average is starting to hit the ceiling of affordability. I think for the most part, current prices will be supported for the next few years, barring some major economic event. However, You'll see some adjustments and local market fluctuations in pricing as some of the exuberance wears off, probably right after the summer. The unsustainable nature of the COVID home demand surge is running out. We're seeing supply and demand in action. The number of wealthy buyers with bags of cash who all decided to buy at the same time is finite. That'll dry up, and I don't expect average buyers who are forced to compete with those people by waiving inspections and appraisals and figuring out how to pay cash will be willing or able to do that for much longer. In summary, inventory's up, days on the market up, home builders forced to take the brakes off at some point. Will it be a crash or a bubble pop or a balloon pop? Barring an unexpected economic catastrophe, no, this is not like what happened in 2008. With the predatory lending and all that. It'll be soft. It'll be more like a... Thanks for watching.